Hello, welcome to A Wealthy Life. In this episode, we're going to get imaginative. I've been a bit dark, controversial, maybe even thought-provoking and evocative in the last couple of episodes. So I really want us to get a bit more playful in this episode. And the title of the episode is What Would You Do If You Didn't Have to Work Just to Pay the Bills? So there are a couple of components here. What would you do if you didn't have to work and pay the bills? So we need to work out what pay the bills means in order to understand how much money would be involved so that you didn't have to work to pay the bills. So it's a bit of this is going to be a bit of a circle that we're going to go around. We're going to start, and then that's going to lead us to something, and then we're going to come back to the beginning, and then we're going to work it out and come back round again. And what I also want to be clear on is just because you don't have to work to pay the bills doesn't mean to say that you'll never work or that you can't work, because actually you'll get really bored if you don't have a purpose. So to be precise, what would you do if you never had to work another day in your life just to pay the bills? And how can you get clear on what life you actually want to live? Because basing your budget on the life you live now might not be actually relevant. So we need to start thinking about what your wealthy life would be. And that's what I'm going to help you with in this podcast. I'm going to take you through those thought processes and even some thorny issues, I suppose. What if you can't afford the life that you want to live? What do you do now? It's not the end of the road. There is a way to get through that. Let me tell you a little story about Tom, a friend of mine, mutual mentor, part client, part wizard, part philanthropist, and someone who is living his ideal wealthy life. I was a podcast on his show called The Zone Show, and my very first appearance, and I think I've been on there maybe 3 or 4 times, my very first appearance was back in 2014, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes so that you can have a listen. And we did a show called The Abundance Zone, and the conversation was about money and wealth, and I think it, like I like doing with you, it planted a seed for Tom. And a couple of years he came back and we had that conversation. He sort of really bit the bullet, and we had the property conversation. And at the end of it, we mutually decided that he never wanted to be a landlord, that going down the property route was not his way of generating, if you like, a second stream of income. I hate the term passive income because no income is truly passive. And if it is, you're not managing it, and it probably could be working better than it's working for you now. So this second stream of income, which could have come from property, wasn't going to work for him because it just didn't fit. And I've got a few clients like that I work with. They don't want to invest in property, but we have the conversations of, okay, how are you going to make your assets and your resources work for you so that you don't have to? So we started off this conversation, and just to say, the irony is that Tom is actually a landlord at the moment, but that's a whole nother story that maybe one day he'll explain to you. So we had this strategic conversation to really get clear about what his life would look like, what money he might need. And again, that's a little bit of a guess, but it can be an educated guess. And then how he was going to create this income so that he didn't have to work if he didn't want to. We wanted something that was a recurring monthly payment to replace a wage. So now Tom, when not writing books or recording meditations and music for one of America's largest meditation apps, is spending his semi-retirement with his wife and his 2 dogs in his increasingly becoming eco house in the country. He's actually living his dream. He's an author, come magician, come musician, come meditation leader, come philanthropist. No, that's a hard word. Philanthropist. And all of that was because we had that conversation about money and what would his wealthy life look like. Because it's only when you have that conversation you can rule things in, you can rule things out, you can park things for the future. But if you don't start with a conversation and you don't start with a plan, where are you ever going to get to? And that just makes me think of an American speaker, and really, I think he used to speak on the multi-level marketing sort of circuit in the States. You know, he used to go and speak to inspire people that were starting up all of their businesses that would involve them selling products from home and all of this sort of stuff. And his name was Jim Rohn, and he does the most incredible story about a boat, and it's only when you set the sail, and oh my goodness me, his voice just lulls you in. And it's really about that concept of, if you don't make a plan, you'll make a, you know, not making a plan is a plan to fail. What's that sentence? You either plan to succeed or you plan to fail. Yes, something like that. Either you plan to succeed or you plan to fail. Work that one out. You could Google that as well, and Google Jim Rohn, but I'll also see if I can find it and stick it in the show notes. Let's get back on topic again. So what would your ideal life look like? And I think probably it would help if we start off by sharing a common understanding of what we mean by wealth. And I'm going to unpack this in the next episode, so just do it briefly here for you. But in my language, rich means to have money in the bank, but not necessarily the time to enjoy it. Your focus would all be about making money and the pursuit of making money. Wealth, on the other hand, is about having enough money to live the life you want, whatever that is, and that's a different amount for everybody. Whereas rich is a level of money. Wealth can be any amount of money that you want to live your life the way you want to live it, and to still have the time to enjoy the money that you've got to live the life that you want. So one really is about the focus of money, and the other is really about the focus of freedom or time. And while these aren't mutually exclusive, they're not always natural bedfellows. I don't think this is the way we've been taught in society, that you can have your cake and eat it too. In fact, we even say that. I'm so full of all of these sayings. I really need to rein them all back in again. Apologies. But you can have your cake and eat it too. And if you think about it, how many rich people do we hear of that get divorced? And maybe like me in the previous episode 2, they forgot to talk to their partners about money and family finances, and the stress became too much for one or other of them. Or maybe because one of them was so pursuing money that they weren't in the home and became disconnected. If they spend all their time at work or focused on making money to the detriment of family and fun times, then how are you holding on to that sense of partnership? So that's the difference. Rich is about money with very little focus on time, and wealth is about finding a way that time and money can work together for you so that you can have what you want. So now let's get into some work on this, and let's start with the question, what would you do if you didn't have to work? Just that for a moment, just that thought. And let it sit with you, play with the idea, roll it to the edge of your mind, and maybe go to those places where you keep your secret desires and wishes out of the way, and just go and look. Have you got little things that you've been stashing away that you would love to do if only you didn't have to work? And remember, in case you get panicked, that this doesn't mean that you will never have to work, right? You can. It depends on how old you are, because actually, if you're quite young and you're listening to this and you're, easily 10 or 20 or maybe more years away from retirement, working might be a good idea for you. And this, ironically, is going to sound like I'm contradicting the conversation I had when I spoke to you about, is your life driven by your job title? And the point of that is that there is something about having a structure in your life and a purpose to your life that staves off insanity and boredom. But there is a massive difference between getting up every day to go to a job that you hate, or to run a business that is exhausting you, or the burden of managing staff is just sucking the joy out of your soul, and choosing to work either part-time or full-time in a business that you love. Now, that could be the business that you have now. You just work in it in a different way. You bring in someone underneath you so you don't have to work as many hours, and you move into a more senior managerial role, you know, where you're just supervising the team rather than working in the business. You're stepping back and you're not even working on the business. You're just passing by the business and checking that the business is still churning out the money that it should be doing. But you've got more balance in your life. You could even be working part-time to support your community or driving forward some sort of passion project. It's about choice, because money is coming into your family unit some other way. And don't cheat and just make it that your other half has to go to work and you get to do everything you like, because that's a little unfair on them. And it would be quite nice if they could also have some time off. But it's about coming together as a partnership and working out, how do we want to spend our life? What time do we want to spend together? And what time do we want to spend apart, exploring our own activities? And how can we generate the income for that? And I have to go back to school again. Here I go, knocking it again. I have to be clear that I'm a former college teacher. I spent over 11 years as a university lecturer. I love learning. I'm just not sure why we have to send young people to university for 3 years. Why can't it be 2? Why can't we get it done quicker? Then it wouldn't have to cost tens of thousands of pounds for the education in a topic that may not lead directly to a job or even a life that makes your heart sing. Is it a good use of time and money? And then if we go looking further down the curriculum, is the education that our children are getting in secondary schools and primary schools, is that curriculum actually fit for our future and preparing our kids for the future? And if it's not, then we need to do something about this. And, you know, unless you start homeschooling your children, you've got to supplement these conversations and find your children's passion and move it forward. And I'm going to take that forward a minute, but let me just go back to school. So school teaches us to learn to get a job so that we can earn money, so that we can buy things, because that keeps the economy moving forward. And it's a continual spiral of the acquisition of debt and then its repayment. So buy stuff, pay it off, earn more money, spend more than you earn because you're not probably checking on it, get debt, have to pay it off. So therefore you have to work more, and it keeps you trapped. And it feels like you're trapped. Now, what if school inspired you? And forgive me if it did. And wow, weren't you the lucky one if it did inspire you? But imagine if it had inspired you, and imagine if it could inspire your children or our grandchildren or anything else to create a life that was based on what you wanted your life to be like. So in my 5th book, The Wealthy Retirement Plan, I talked about the 4 M's. And these are means, memories, mission, and multi-generational. And I'm just going to sort of explain it to you if you haven't read the book. Obviously, if you haven't read the book, pop over to Amazon. It's readily available for you there. But means is, and I do this because I love a bit of alliteration, so I had to call it means, but basically it means work. It's your way of generating an income. Now, it could be employment, it could be running a business, but it could also be managing your investments, setting something up that's going to constantly bring in income for you. Memories is easy. That's the time that you spend with family or friends, creating really what money can't buy, the memories that you can make, the thoughts that make you smile. When you close your eyes, they're the things that you remember. And at the end of our lives, that's going to be all that matters, is our memories. So the 3rd one is mission. And then this is where you get passion in your life. How can you further your passion, whether it's for curing cancer or solving climate change, Maybe your mission is to be an artist or an athlete or a musician of some sort. Mission is anything that stirs up your blood and lifts your heart in a way that memories can do as well. But it's a more doing thing, and often a doing thing for yourself or for others, whereas memories are doing things with people about joy, which is lovely. Mission is about accomplishing something, so that if you do get in a position where you don't have to work, mission is where you can get some purpose back in your life. And the last M is multi-generation. And this is, how can you spend time throughout your life sharing knowledge up and down the chronology of human existence, spending time learning from those that came before you and learning even from those that come after you. You know, we've got a lot to learn from the younger generation, but equally they can learn from us. You know, how do we get to where we are, and how can we move forward? How can we solve the problems that we're facing? And then this is possibly the most powerful question I am ever going to ask you in your life. If your life plan, now that'll vary with emphasis and priorities over your age, but if your life plan was based on the question, how would you like to live your life, rather than what job are you going to be forced to do because of the exams that you took, what life would you have chosen for yourself? So much like the question I asked you before, let it roll out to the edges of your mind and go, goodness, if I hadn't done that first job after school or after university because of the exam results that I got, what actually was it that I wanted to be? You know, all those childhood dreams, the jokes around being a train driver or an astronaut or whatever it was. And of course, all the kids nowadays want to be footballers and celebrities. But what really was it that you were passionate about? I would have always have been an underwater photographer and an explorer. I hope you've heard of him, the famous man, Jacques Cousteau, who invented the aqualung. And I would always joke and introduce myself as the undiscovered granddaughter of Jacques Cousteau. Of course, it's not true. But what it did, and it's been throughout my life that's what I wanted to do, even when I was following the traditional path of my exam said, go do this, that, and the other. But what it did do is it gave me that anchor point, so that when I started to think about, right, well, how really do I want life to be? I was made redundant and that financial rug pulled out from under me. I was in a job that I loved and I thought that I was going to stay in that job forever. And then my boss said, you're not needed anymore. The government funding's finished. That's it. Off you go. And it shocked me to my core that I thought, I'm not going to play this game anymore. I want to decide what my life wants to be like. And I'm going to make sure that I can earn the money to live that life. And it led me to create the life I have with Bob, which is, well, certainly in the past was solely focused on where can we go diving next. And we have been so privileged to dive all over the world, from whales in Mexico to mantas in the Maldives. We've been to the Barrier Reef and seen the wobbegong shark, and I'll see if I can find a link for that as well. The wobbegong shark in Papua New Guinea. We've had bull sharks and bobbit worms in Indonesia, and of course good old Nemo in Egypt, and raggy tooth sharks in South Africa, just to mention a few. And probably our coldest ever dive was in the Bristol Channel with the Lundy seals. So we have been all over the place and seen the most incredible underwater world imaginable, because I created a wealthy life and a financial plan that was set up for us to do that. The starting point is, okay, here's our calendar for the year. Where are we going to go on holiday? And then what amount of time is left? And in that amount of time left, how can I earn the money that I need to earn to pay for the holidays? So more recently, of course, we've turned our passions to gardening and redeveloping our home, as our travel plans have been a bit curtailed over the last few years. But your priorities and your plans can change. with the amount of money that you need to generate and how you make it, and also as you just change through life. And that's the joy of creating your own wealthy life. It's really a life that you decide. You decide what you want to do, you decide how you're going to make the money, and then you go out and you make the money and you live the life. And if you can't raise the money that you need and still have the time to live the life that you want, then you adjust your plans and you adjust your main goals, and you maybe spread them out a little bit longer, and maybe it takes you a little bit longer, but you can still have what you want. So if you decided what you wanted for, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years, the next question would be, how much money do you need to create in order to have that life? And while I always totally advocate your personal financial position as being so important, and I mentioned this in past episodes, and I also mentioned the resource, which I will put in here. This is a slightly different question. So this isn't about measuring the money you have coming in and the money that you're spending. This is about understanding what the core costs or your essential costs will be that you need to pay in the life that you are imagining. So it does take a little bit of imagination here. Understanding the basic costs to keep the roof over your head, your roof. Do that again. It's about understanding what are the core costs and essential costs you will need to pay for in this new wealthy life that you're imagining. So you're not only imagining your wealthy life, you're also now having to imagine what this wealthy life will cost. But there are going to be some basic costs that are fairly fundamental, whatever goes on in your life. What are the basic costs to keep your roof over your head, to stay clothed, and to stay fed? And you'll understand some of those costs from your current life. And when you then think about the life that you want to move into, your wealthy life, you'll be able to adjust these accordingly. Maybe some of your priorities will have changed. You might not, well, you might set up a business that doesn't require you to stay stuck in the physical location that you are now. And therefore, your overheads for accommodation could change if you went to another country, for example. So this phase is a bit tricky. It requires information, a bit of guesswork, if you like, some research. But how much money do you need so that you will have enough money, and maybe even more than enough money to pay your expenses, but more than enough so that you've got some left to cover the detail of the life that you want to live? So you need to work out how much money you need to pay your core expenses, enough to cover your core expenses, and then what more you need on top of that so that you can do the things that you want to do in your wealthy life. So if we took, for example, that you want to take up a sporting activity or athletics or something, and let's just use the example of a gym membership, which is fairly common to most people, but we'll give you an example. So in your current life, you work all the time, you don't belong to the gym, your wages come in, your expenses go out, everything's great because you're checking it, because you're using the spreadsheet, it's all good, you're not stressed. Now what you want to do is you want to get fit because you want to run a marathon or a triathlon or something like that. And so in order to live the life you want to live, which is traveling the world doing triathlons, not only do you have to have a job that gives you plenty of time off, but it needs to be a job that will pay for your international travel to do the triathlons and your gym membership to get fit enough to do the triathlons. So now you can start to go, okay, so these are my basic costs and I have enough money to cover those. This is how I want to spend the rest of my time. And I want to have 1 week off a month. How can I earn all the amount of money that I need to earn in just 3 weeks of the month so that I can have a week of the month off and still have the money to travel somewhere to run the triathlon and still belong to the gym so that I can keep fit? I hope that makes sense as an example to you. And basically, there's a point of equilibrium here. It's about how much time are you willing to give up in a way to invest in earning the money to live the life you want? And then how much time are you not willing to give up towards earning because you want to spend it doing something else? So if, for example, you can't earn enough money to run a triathlon every month, could you earn enough money so that you could have 1 week off every 2 months? And instead of running 12 triathlons a year, you ran 6. Or maybe you can only do 4, but you can work out how close you can get to your ideal wealthy life, but at least have a wealthy life, a life that you've created. Now, this podcast, nor me, are against buying things. In fact, I've got a very bad shoe and necklace habit. But when I spend money on stuff, I know that I had to spend time to earn that money, to then trade that money and that time for the stuff that I am thinking that I desire. And if I'm willing to give up the time, for example, with my grandchildren or in my garden or working on my community project to earn money to buy something, that thing that I want to buy has got to be more important to me than my grandchildren, my garden, or my projects or passions. That's a really interesting noise, and I will tell you about that in a podcast. It's 3:33 at this precise moment, and that is the alarm asking me why I am successful today. So I will tell you, I'm going to leave that as just a little teaser and tell you about that one in the future. But I was making a really important point there, which is about trading time for stuff, and that stuff has to be worth more than the thing that you could have spent your time doing. So if you have children or grandchildren or a partner that you love or a parent that you want to go and see, and you can't see them because you're working and you're working to make money to buy stuff, ask yourself, is that stuff more important than the time that you could have spent with loved ones? Or if you think back to the 4 M's that I spoke to, is it more important than the memories you could be making? Is it more important than the mission that you could be living? Is it more important than the multi-generational learning and knowledge transfer that you could play with? So there's consequences and there's payoffs for all of this. And thinking about what's important to you, what your priorities are, will really help you sort of unpack this and start to create that budget for yourself. So what could you do to generate more than enough money without using all of your time creating another job, so that you could have the cash flow to live the life that you want to live and still have the time to enjoy it? So that's quite a question. I'll say it to you one more time just so that you've got it. What could you do to generate enough money without using all your time to create another job, so that you could have the cash flow to live the life that you want to live and still have the time to enjoy it? And so the hint there will be that it's not about getting another job. It's not about working harder. And in some ways, it's not even about working smarter. It's about using your resources so that they work for you. So it's leverage. And we're going to come up with that word and that topic quite a few times going forward. I'm out of time again. Time up for this episode. But I'm going to keep coming back to this central idea that you can have the life you want, which may or may not include running your own business or being part of some passion-led project. And you will be able to do this from a position of understanding how much of your time you're willing to spend to buy the things that you want and still live a life that you love and have the time left to enjoy living the life that you love. So I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope that you put some time into wandering around your mind, having a daydream. If you're listening and it's warm, maybe go for a walk. Even if it's raining, dress up appropriately, go for a walk. Have yourself a bath or lie on the sofa and listen to the podcast again if you like, and let your mind wander out to the edges and just think about that really important question I asked. If you hadn't gone to school and followed a path that said, I've done these exams, therefore I'm going to follow this life. If you'd been asked the question when you were younger, what do you really want to do? What are you passionate about? What memories do you want to create? What do you want to learn? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? All of that. And then from that question, you'd been able to create a roadmap for your life that isn't all about doing it right now. It's not all about now. It's about creating a roadmap that means that you can enjoy the journey on the way to having the life that you want, a wealthy life. And if you've got a roadmap and you're enjoying the journey on the way to having a wealthy life, you've got the wealthy life now, because you're choosing to spend your time in a way that is giving you joy, that is purpose. It isn't just driven by a job title or a need to earn money or a desire to buy stuff. So please take some time to think and to explore this. I really hope you've enjoyed the episode, and I really hope that you've got some powerful insights out of this about how you can create a wealthy life that you want to live. And of course, please, can I remind you to rate, review, like, subscribe, heart, share, everything this podcast, please. And of course, get in touch if you've got questions. Book a call with me if you want to discuss your plans. I'd love to be your sounding board. Follow the links that are in the show notes, and we can make sure that all of this happens. The purpose of this episode has been to tug at the weeds that I think we've all been led to think were beneficial when they aren't. What would you do if you didn't have to work? What would your balance of the 4 M's be? How much money would be enough money to change your life into a life that you want to live? And what could you do to generate more than enough money without using more of your time to create another job? And we'll talk about that in a couple of episodes. So watch out for the next episode, where we're going to go into this in a bit more, this idea of wealthy versus rich, and what does a wealthy life mean to you? And I will be explaining how you can create a plan to live the wealthy life that you want to live. And I'm going to be sharing some of the stories of some of the clients that I've worked with over the years and what a wealthy life means to them, so that you can go, yeah, that's what I want, or no, that's not what I want, but that's made me think about what I do want. So as always, thank you so much for taking your precious time to listen to A Wealthy Life. My name's Vicky Wooshea, and I really hope that this episode has brought some much needed whoosh into your life.